Hello YouTube friends, I've settled myself down on the table here because I feel like doing a little bit of embroidery. But before I get started, I just want to tell you about this cup. Now, you've never seen this cup before, and that's because I tidied out I'm tidying out all sorts of corners of the last homely house. And I tidied out a big area in the porch. Shelves cleaned, stuff thrown away and repositioned in various places in the house. And this cup and saucer here had, for some reason, had been put away in there. I have no idea why. I bought this years ago in Whimsical. It's a beautiful handmade cup and saucer. This is before I was doing ceramics, and I just really like the proportions and the beautiful colour and the gold on the rim and everything. So I've brought this cup and saucer back out again, and it's going to be my go-to for cups of tea from now on. So this morning, what I'm really in the mood for doing is a little bit of embroidery. So I've got all the bits and pieces that I need here, and I'm going to embroider a bit more onto the last homely house tea towel. Now, I think it was when these first went on sale or were in the Christmas box or whatever, somebody said, oh, I'm going to embroider mine, and a few people said, that's a really good idea, I fancy doing that. So I started to embroider mine. And I haven't got very far with it, but there's some very pretty little bits and pieces, like this pin cushion here. I really like the pinheads there. And then this biscuit, which I'll have to try and remember how I did that, because I did this about maybe 6 or 9 months ago. I did the feathers on this hen here. This took me forever. And then I've done one of my beehives here. And I really enjoyed doing the little wings on the bees. It's the centre of that biscuit's done there. And then down here, where Martha's drawn these lovely jars full of buttons and beads, every time I've got a colour in my needle, I'm just doing a couple of French knots in the beads here, so that that bead jar will be completely full of of coloured beads. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to do all of it. In fact, I probably am not going to do all of it, but every time the fancy takes me, I'm just going to pick it up and do a little bit more. Now, do you use an embroidery hoop when you stitch? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, and I've got a number of different sizes of embroidery hoop, but you know, I'm not sure I'm going to use it today. I think I'll just pick it up. I'll see. We'll see how we go. But what I've done now, I've settled myself down with a cup of tea in my favourite rediscovered cup. My teapot's keeping nice and warm here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of stitching. I might do, I could do the other beehive. That would be a good idea. Or maybe some more feathers on the hen. I don't know. I'm not an embroiderer, not by any stretch of the imagination. I really am not. But it's fun to try, isn't it? Now, okay, let's do a bit more of this beehive. I've got some brown here. I'm using these old embroidery threads that are in my little beautiful drawers over there. And I'm just using 3 strands, but when I did the bees' wings, I seem to remember I just used 1 or 2 strands. So like I say, I'm no embroiderer, but I like to have a try. What's the worst that can happen? It's looking quite nice. Right, embroidery hoop or not, let's see. It's very messy on the back. I know there's this school of thought that you should, your embroidery on the back should be as neat as your embroidery on the front. It's definitely not going to be the case here, so please don't look at the back of my embroidery. So when I went to Whitstable, where this cup came from, I went, I'm trying to remember how many years ago now. It's a lot of years ago. A lot of years ago. But I went to do a course with someone called Julie Arkle, who is a wonderful artist and does beautiful, quirky, weird and wonderful sort of folk art. And I went with a friend of mine, and it was an awfully long way because I live right in the north of England and Whitstable's right in the south of England on the coast, right there on the seafront. And in all the tidying up I've been doing in the porch, but also over here in the shelves beside me, the other day I took everything off those shelves, gave everything a really good dusting, and then only put back about half of it. But in doing so, I found the things that I made when I was on that course with Julie Arkle. And I want to show you some of them now, because, well, they're just a little bit weird and wonderful. I really enjoyed a couple of days spent in a very beautiful place, but making very, very, very strange things. I made this weird and wonderful, crazy paper mache doll, which is, you'll have to agree, it's a strange thing. But she's been sitting on my shelf for years and years and years, just sitting there, looking out at the world. But then I also made these 3 little jars that were a little bit like, I suppose when I decided to make these and when I came up with the thought for them, I think the idea was that it was a little bit like specimens in a jar in a lab, or in an like in a museum, you know, like preserved things in a museum. And so each of these little weird things has got its own quirky nature, and has been sitting on the shelves there unseen for a long, long time. Really great to get them down, dust them off, have a little look at them, and decide that they deserve their place up there in my little museum of curiosities. Blimey, that tea's nice. I want to show you something else that I found when I was tidying out in the porch, and that's this box that's full of little bits of beads that are threaded onto wire. Now, I had these years ago hanging up in the kitchen somewhere, I seem to remember. And let's get them all out. There are loads of them, and they're all in a tangled old mess now. So I'm going to have a look at them, and I want to make something that can possibly hang in the polytunnel. So I'm going to recycle these into another decorative thing. But I need to see them untangled, and so I'm going to make a little jig. I've got the basket here with Agnes's Duplo, her big, it's the big building blocks that are Lego but the next size up. And I'm going to make a stack of them. It's about that high with a little jig thing on the top. Okay, with a hole. Bear with me, you'll see what I'm doing. So I've got 2 of these here and a knitting needle that I'm going to poke through the bit where the hole is. And then if I stand that like that, it's only got to last for as long as it takes me to untangle these. I'm going to bend the wire at the top and stick them on there. So I'll just pop this here, this little jig. And I made these years and years ago. I can't even remember when, but I've got a lot of beads. I've got a drawer over there in my drawers full of beads. And so, yeah, of course I have. There's another one. Let's straighten it out. And we'll make a beautiful dangly thing and hang it in the polytunnel. What about that? They've been in this box here for years. And it's a shame to not see these things. Here's one that needs straightening out. There we go. There's another one. And a mess. There we go. Let's straighten that one out. There. Okay, well they're pretty. What are we going to do with them? This, I'll just put those to one side over there for a moment so that I can show you these, because this is a big long, oh, I don't even know how long this is. Look at that, that's a really long beaded piece. Okay, well we can do something with that, I'm sure. It's onto good strong wire. That's a nice long one. See how many long ones there are. I can't even remember making these. I must have made them for something. These long ones, I don't remember making these at all. Well, their time is now. Whatever I'm going to do with them, their time has come. This is a pretty one. No memory of this one at all. This is like a necklace. This is just like a necklace. I'm not someone who wears necklaces or earrings or beads really. Every now and then the fancy will take me and I'll wear beads. But they tend to irritate me. I don't wear rings, I don't wear bracelets. I don't really wear any of that kind of thing. But I do like seeing them hanging up. Okay. So we've got them all untangled now. Now I'm just going to decide how to get creative with them. I was reading some of the comments on the video about helping Anna to make a quilt, and I think I've really confused people about the idea of thread bunnies and leaders and enders. So I've just come over to the sewing machine for a minute just to explain what I mean about those two terms. Now, neither of these are my idea. Leaders and enders, I first picked up that idea from Bonnie Hunter from Quiltville, who's a channel I definitely recommend you go and look at if you don't know her. She's got an amazingly good scrap management system, which I wish I was better at doing. But also she has this notion, I first picked up this notion of leaders and enders from her. And so when you're sewing on your sewing machine, if you just start straight away with the fabric underneath your needle, and the tails of the thread loose there, you can sometimes get what people call a bird's nest, or the fabric can sometimes sort of tangle up and get stuck underneath in the bobbin chamber and all of that. And so in order to keep the flow of the sewing going, chain piecing is a really good idea. So you get two pieces of fabric, sew them together, and then the next two pieces of fabric and stitch those together, so that you can do, firstly it saves thread and it saves having all those tails of thread all over the place, but it's just so much more efficient. You can just keep the movement going as you do your pieces. Now, inevitably, you will get to the end of your run of fabric that you're sewing together for your project. So there's two things you can do that I know of where you can avoid having lots of loose threads and introducing this bird's nest tangle when you start to sew again. And the first one I'll tell you about is thread bunnies. Now, or thread catchers, whatever you want to call them. I actually collect mine. I usually start a new thread bunny for each project, and so that what I've now got is a whole basket full of lovely little bits of fabric with loads of lines of sewing over them. So I'll show you this one nice and close up. Let's see if that will focus. So it's just just a square inch, a little scrap of fabric that's got threads sewn across it. You pick this up when you get to the end of your run of legitimate sewing, and then run your sewing machine over this. Look, I've got loads of them. And of course you can just throw this away at the end of your stitching, but I like to keep them. And so that's one way of keeping your sewing machine stitches going over a piece of fabric. And that's fine. I think what Bonnie Hunter would say is that firstly, it's a waste of time and fabric and thread. So she came up, and many other people too have come up with this idea of leaders and enders. And I'm going to explain those to you now. Now, here beside me at my sewing machine, I've cut, I'll just angle you down so that you can see. So I've cut this huge pile. Anytime I've got a spare few minutes, I just cut a few more. 2.5 inch squares in every colour of red that I've got, and 2.5 inch squares in neutrals. I've got loads of different neutrals that anytime I've got a spare 5 minutes, and I just cut a few more of these. And they're in this box beside me here. And when I get to the end of a run of stitching, I just pick two of them up completely at random, like so. Put them right sides together, and then I'm ready to sew again on whatever my project is. I snip this off and I pop it in the drawer beside me, And then when I've got the iron out and I'm doing something else, I'll iron them open. So that then what I've got is a white and a red, or whatever you're choosing to do, two little pieces of fabric that are just sewn together. Then when I've got a lot of these, and I have a lot of these, the next leader and ender you can do is sewing them together in sets of 4. And then you've got a useful block ready to make your next quilt. So I've no idea how big I'm going to make this, but I'm just going to keep going and going and going until the whole thing fills my design board, and then I'll sew them together, and that will be another quilt top. And it may be that when I sew these together, I'll need another leaders and enders project. So leaders and enders, it's like at the beginning and end of a run of sewing that you're doing for your proper project that you're doing, but you've got a secondary block that you're making for nothing at all. So those are the 2 ways that I sometimes use a little thread catcher like this, and if I'm organised, I'll use a leaders and enders project like this. So I really hope that clears up the confusion that I caused by just calling this thread bunny or a leader and ender. I'm sorry if that was confusing. So in my drawer beside me here, in the top drawer, I just have those ready for when I need them. This is a funny bit of a project that I want to do now. I've got this tape that I dyed years ago. It's cotton tape, the sort of stuff you use for bunting. I'm actually going to make some bunting. And I've got all sorts of scraps. Now, when I was showing you the leaders and enders, this is the kind of fabric that I was using, but these are too small for the leaders and enders project. It probably would work really well if I stitched them onto tape like I have done with my Liberty fabric, but I've got an idea of something else that I want to do with them. So I'm just going to pull a few out. I only want the sort of small square ones, and I've got loads and loads of those. And I've got a strange little project that I want to make. It won't take long, and I think you'll like it. I'm definitely going to like it. So I'll just start with those few. And off we go. Yeah, maybe there. Maybe I'll come back later with a bit of string and tie those up properly. But I think they look lovely up there. So I made the beads into a little dangly thing because why not? And now I've got to decide how to hang it and where to hang it. Well, look, there's a handy bolt sticking out of the... Well, it can go there for now, and then I think it might actually be nicer here, right in the middle. So I'll have to bring some wire down and fix it to here. But then I'm going to bling up the whole of my polytunnel, and it's going to look green but also sparkly, which makes me very happy. So I'm really enjoying sitting in the sunshine on this bench, stitching a little button on my tea towel. There's a few little glimpses into my day here at the Last Homely House, and I hope you've enjoyed them. And if you have, think about subscribing, give us a thumbs up, and click the notifications bell so you'll never miss when we post a video. Thanks so much for watching.